Yeah, buddy. That moment gets me every time. The blood, the brain matter after the absolute smackdown. But first, before we get into this video talking about my thoughts and concerns for Battlefield 1, I want to thank each and every one of you. Without you guys, this would not have been possible. I was actually part of the Battlefield 1 live stream event in London. Absolutely epic seeing the trailer 6 to 8 times on the surround system cranked, people oohing and eyeing, reacting, including somebody in the back dousing the theater with man tears. I heard, "It's just so beautiful." It was absolutely epic. Thank you to all. So before we get into some of the stuff I'm really looking forward to, let's go back in time and never forget. The launch of Battlefield 3 and Battlefield 4 were absolutely abysmal. Client server stability issues, countless bugs. Battlefield 3 for about 6 months, Battlefield 4 for 8+ months, until DICE LA came in. Probably the thing that saved the Battlefield franchise in my mind. Battlefield 4 was doomed. DICE LA started working with the community. They were transparent, open, and honest, and good things started happening. Bugs were getting squashed, maps were being created, and hit registration was much improved. It's a process that just ended a couple months ago, and it really set us up well as a player and a community moving forward. DICE now knows this situation works. They're open and honest with us. We'll give them tons of feedback. We'll tell them how we broke their game and all kinds of ideas that they could try to implement that they might throw out. In the meantime of that process happening, Battlefield Hardline launched and Star Wars Battlefront on the updated Frostbite engine, and there were no major client or server stability issues. That's the good news. So if CTD didn't exist, if Battlefield 4 didn't get cleaned up, I would absolutely be scared to actually jump into Battlefield 1 at launch. It could be the third storm coming. But because all these wonderful things have happened with the implementation of Battlefield DICE LA, and of course the community working with them back and forth, I actually think a concern turned into a positive thing through that process and Frostbite maturing. The next thing I want to talk about is the skill gap in Battlefield 1. This is probably going to be one of the highest skill gap games in the Battlefield franchise. By now, you guys already know they overhauled the class system. Guns are going to act quite a bit differently. The melee system has been reworked. And of course, a lot of different mechanics have been tweaked and overhauled based on previous Battlefield titles and feedback the developers have gotten from previous titles from community members. So I'm really excited to have a bigger skill gap in this game. A lot of people were concerned about Star Wars Battlefront being too dumbed down. That won't be the case with Battlefield 1. Not to mention the money that EA's putting behind it and Peter Moore. There's going to be big-time competitive dollars. Probably more competitive dollars in Battlefield 1 than all the previous Battlefield titles put together. And that's saying a lot. They actually made their own division. They've redone spectate mode. Not sure if battle recorder's in the game, aka demo mode or not, but they're going to be shoving money out there. It'll be interesting to see the talent that comes back to the table, some new talent coming to the table, and if you're interested in that sort of thing, it's a perfect time to get involved. Which leads me to a positive. After the debacle of Star Wars Battlefront on PC, server browser is confirmed by the Battlefield Twitter, and that's great news. No matter what type of match you want to find, you'll be able to pick and choose as you please. One of the things I'm looking forward to in Battlefield 1 to see how this plays out. Just Frags asks, will planes act differently when bits of the planes come off, like we saw in the trailer? Battlefield responds, poor plane lost part of its wing. Of course it will be affected. So is this dynamic damage? Will the plane fly differently based on where the damage has taken place and how much damage it's taken? The other question is, how are we going to repair these air vehicles? Are we going back to old school Battlefield where you might have to go back to deployment or your base to fix your ride? Another thing that really made me happy is tank crews are coming back for Battlefield 1. Wildfire asks, are tanks controlled by one person still, or do they require multiple people operating the guns and driving? Both was the answer. Obviously, by now you've seen some of the vehicles that will be in. There were 1 to 2 person vehicles, and there were multi-person tanks, where the driver didn't do much more than driving, and the death was dealt by the gunners, secondary and third seat. And there's rumor that you can even fit a full squad in some of these vehicles. So, the fear of the tank could be coming back to the Battlefield franchise. And again, that's part of elongating or creating a higher skill gap. And I really couldn't be happier. If you see a tank, especially one that has a crew in it, that should make you shake in your boots and maybe leave a little surprise in the trench for your buddies that are probably quickly chasing after you. Up next is two subjects near and dear to my heart, and they kind of go hand in hand. The Destroyer that we saw in the Battlefield 1 trailer, raining death from above, and destruction. Not only are the vessels completely controllable by you as a player, but the firepower they bring to the table. And they can be brought down pretty quickly once the other team figures out what's going on, so they can get focus fired down. So, Mark Schofield asks, will we see a range of naval vessels with different weaponry too? Battlefield responds, there will be a range of naval vessels for you to enjoy. The only question is this: will we see some version of Naval Strike for Battlefield 1? I absolutely enjoyed it in Battlefield 4. It'd be interesting to see what other vessels and what a potential game mode would look like. Bad Company 2 was the height of destruction in the Battlefield franchise. It was absolutely epic. Somebody in a building, just take the whole building down, and the one next to it, and the one next to that. You can actually level an entire map, where it's the buildings, the shacks, or the trees. It was genius. But then it ramped down severely in Battlefield 3 and Battlefield 4. The developers heard our cries. They've actually jacked it way through the roof. One of the developers actually remarked in the live stream event that they actually had to dial it back a little bit, because sometimes it absolutely eradicate any and all cover on various maps. So it's going to be a lot more than Battlefield 4, a lot more than Battlefield 3, potentially as much as Bad Company 2. But for the balance of the map, it might be interesting to leave a couple spots, or the way the rubble piles pile up, to actually provide for some cover as troops and players are trying to move up and probably flank. Another thing that's near and dear to my heart and most Battlefielders' hearts is playing the objective. PTFOing, capping and defending flags, helping your teammates with the class that you're playing. The good news is this: the system has completely been overhauled and reworked, and will be rewarding those of you who put the team play and the objectives first. So what do you guys think? We've all had a couple days to digest the information from the live stream. We've seen several developer tweets and, of course, interviews from various media outlets. What kind of questions do you guys have? What are you wondering about? The good news is this: EA Play is coming quick in about a month. The open beta will be sometime this summer. As always, guys, thanks for watching. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you guys soon.